One day, I was in a thrift store with a friend of mine, and we were looking through the books just to see what was available. It's kind of interesting to see what kinds of things people have written about in an unfiltered selection. Due to the nature of thrift stores, I get to see what other people have bought and were at one point interested in, which is pretty cool. So I scanned through the nonfiction stuff and spotted a very curious book by the title of How Psychic Are You? By Julie Soskin. I hope I'm saying that right. Maybe. Naturally, I had to skim through it to see what it was about. Turns out it's a very in-depth guide on developing your intuition through various exercises and meditations. It's full of things that I can try doing whenever I feel like and have the quiet time to do. It was like $4, so I figured, why not? I showed it to my friend and told him I'm going to become a psychic. I didn't actually become a psychic, but it was a good meme that still gets referenced every so often. There are quite a few interesting ideas in this book that are a bit wacky on the surface, but they proved to be weirdly insightful once I actually tried them out. Different types of meditation, activities for testing latent psychic power, stuff like that. One thing that caught my attention was a section about crystals, because my mom is a tiny bit weird and had an interest in crystals at some point. The book talks about how crystals contain energy and can absorb negativity and provide various effects depending on the type, which seems outlandish, but I was willing to see if I could get some idea of why this crystal phenomenon seems so consistent. That was not the first time I'd heard of crystal power. I read everything, and since I had no crystals of my own, I decided I'd just keep my eyes open in case I ran into any. As fate would have it, I did find myself in one of those hipster mall shops that sells all kinds of oddities. The people I was with spent time looking at other stuff, and I just started poking all the crystals on display just to see. I touched one specific piece of selenite and got a strange feeling, so I bought it. Selenite is a clear, colorless variety of gypsum, and it's quite a soft mineral, just for reference. I don't actually remember what it was said to be for in terms of crystal healing. Some kind of, I think it was like recharge or something, but that doesn't really matter. The point is that I got a hold of a piece of crystal that actually caused a noticeable reaction. The first thing I did was test if the sensation was a recurrent thing, which it was. And by that point, I had gotten a decent idea of what the feeling was. There is some necessary context to understanding why I even felt anything to begin with. Because I am autistic, I have some sensory sensitivities, mostly light and sound. However, ever since I can remember, I have always hated being near microwaves while they're running. It's been the same my entire life, and even now if I stand too close to a running microwave, I feel some kind of uncomfortable tingling just beneath my skin. I've tested it numerous times. It's very consistent, and it actually changes based on which side of me is facing the microwave, so it's definitely a real sensation. When touching the crystal I bought, I feel something similar to the way I feel next to running microwaves. The only difference is that the crystal creates a softer, more localized version of that slight tingling. If I had to compare it to something, I would say it's like that lingering effect of a nasty static shock. There's that initial shock, which is very sharp, but then there's this kind of like leftover feeling caused by the electric shock. It's like your nerves are just a little more agitated or active than usual in that one spot. Pretty bizarre, yeah. but it's reproducible. I can pick it up off my desk right now and press it to any part of my body to feel this weird sensation. This was very intriguing to me, of course, because it told me that there might be some sort of subtle truth fueling the idea of crystal healing. My first thought was that it could be related to electromagnetic stuff, which is actually not that far from reality. Crystals of various types have different interactions with electricity and such. It's a lot of technical math stuff that I don't actually care to explain. The point is that crystals do interact with electromagnetic fields to some degree. As it turns out, microwaves are a type of electromagnetic radiation, so it's a specific form of the same general concept. If I can feel subtle leakage from a microwave, then I would theoretically be able to feel interference caused by a piece of crystal. Makes perfect sense to me. So this is pretty much the only thing I managed to get out of that book. I did try some of the meditations, and I think I did try some of the third eye development exercises just to see what it was like. I'm pretty familiar with the underlying methods behind meditation, so that part was easy enough and fairly relaxing. The other stuff didn't actually show me much of anything, but I also wasn't about to spend years practicing this stuff just for the sake of curiosity. I was done after like a month of messing around with it. For all I know, there could be some more truth in that book somewhere, but it's buried deeper than I actually care to go. I don't really believe crystals have profound healing properties, but I now understand where that belief probably came from. Anybody who feels anything similar to me when touching crystals and tries to learn more will inevitably land on crystal healing. It's an old explanation for a weird sensory experience, and since nobody's come up with a more easily understood explanation, that's what most people will come into contact with. The math and physics of it are out there, but it doesn't do people much good if they can't understand what it means to them. The most important point I can draw from this is that it doesn't really matter how thoroughly something is explained. If the people hearing the explanation can't tie it to their own lives and their own experiences, then it just doesn't stick. My only advantage here is that I am autistically compelled to dig for the root cause of anything I'm even slightly curious about. I actually can't help it. My brain will eventually put an answer together on its own, even when I'm just idling and doing something else. There is no escaping this for me. If enough people describe similar experiences or express similar beliefs, I can't dismiss it as delusion, because that's just not true. Mass delusion across otherwise regular people who never interact with each other just doesn't happen. When it comes to crystal healing beliefs, I can only assume that this bizarre sensory experience I feel can't be unique to me. Other people have to feel it as well. Science doesn't explain it in everyday words, so everyday people keep the explanation that they can understand, even if it's a bit outlandish on paper. This disconnect between science and lived experience probably exists in many other areas, because scientists are not exactly known for speaking plainly. If there's one thing you can take away from my compulsive curiosity, it's that you can explain something with as much detail as you want, but none of that detail matters if you don't connect it to something real that people can understand and experience for themselves. If you want to reach people, you have to meet them where they are, not force them to climb up to you. Effective communication is kind of like an art in that sense. You can have all the technical skills in the world, but no amount of skill can replace the meaning people feel for themselves.